Thank you, Dia, for the kind words, but more importantly, very scared as well because I was nervous enough already to be on the stage with all you guys, and Prem told us about the achievements of the audience members here as well. And trust you, I've been on a dentist chair yesterday for 2 hours, and I'm more nervous now. So what I'll try to do is just smile through both yesterday and what we're going to do today. The road to India's billion-dollar drug. I was just doing some back-of-the-envelope numbers, and I realized that globally, as of last year, we had $118 billion drugs, none of them coming from India. In fact, over the last 5 years or so, we've had more unicorns than billion-dollar drugs. And in the consumer space, there have been 4 or 5 brands which have crossed $1 billion in sales. In the pharmaceutical space, where intuitively you would believe that, okay, the TAM is the same, the number of people are the same, the number of consumers are the same, we don't have a drug that does even 1/4 of $1 billion. And for the longest time, it was just 1 or 2 drugs that were the best selling. Obviously, Rehan will make those numbers public for all of us, which is the best selling drug, etc. So the question is, $1 billion, is it, as Prem said, it's a matter of when and not if. So let's start with that. What are the conditions that, the preconditions for a drug to reach $1 billion in sales? And how far are we when it comes to that, when it comes to India? Amit.
See, if you do basic math, $1 billion is a million people spending about $1,000 a year, right, on something they believe will help them in their health. Or about 25,000 people spending about $40,000 in something that they will believe will transform their life. The first one is an average cost of the GLP, and the second one is the CAR-Ts, which we are now manufacturing in India to treat blood cancers, where patients have no hope. Now, if you look at both of these numbers, they are a fraction of the patient pool that exists in India today. What is different about this decade is the fact that India is now seeing the influx or the introduction of very innovative therapies across different disease conditions that patients will benefit in a most effective way, right? So India is actually leapfrogging from where it was as a completely genericized market into actually bringing in some of these therapies. Having said that, I think there are a couple of things that still need to be played out, right, which is a matter of time. One is, India is a large market with many, many different subsegments, and covering a large market like this requires both time, effort, and different business models to coexist. The second, which is still very early days, especially for high-value therapies, is the reimbursed model.
Right.
And that is a function of data as well as awareness. I feel it's a matter of time again. We are seeing early shoots of insurance companies, and Priya may add to that, really looking at considering more innovative therapies to come in. So I don't think the day is far away. What encourages me is that now we see more and more novel therapies coming in that are opening up the window for this billion-dollar opportunity.
So the opportunity is here. That sets me up for the question to you, Priya, because as of now, insurance, which is anyway under-penetrated, is over-indexed on hospitalization. What is it that the insurance companies are doing outside of hospitalization to enable the drug that we're talking about, $1 billion drug? Because a lot of these drugs which are showing promise are very expensive.
No, sure. So, absolutely. And it's very heartening to see the amount of innovation that's happening globally. And a lot of that also, bringing in immense amount of opportunity and immense amount of doors being open for our consumers. With that said, talking about the insurance paradigm really, gone are the days where insurers would look at opportunities only from a risk management standpoint, like this is the cost of treatment, this is how inpatient care would look at. All of those paradigms are changing, and with that, OPD, daycare, and innovative treatments are also getting covered. For example, oncology, it comes at a immense amount of innovation and a lot of R&D, and that's where the cost really comes in from. And Newgen Insurance Products, as Amit mentioned, covers immunotherapy, covers a lot of new age drugs, opening the doors of, financing bit of it. But the question really is India insured? And as you rightly mentioned, only 3.7%, coverage. And the relevant question would be not only whether India is insured, is India insured enough? So, you talk to people and you ask them, do you have insurance? And they would say yes, very seldom. I'm not really talking only about, the prime metros. People would say, yeah, I have, my corporate cover. How much is the cover? 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs. I mean, in the age and time where we're talking about, the kind of lifestyle diseases, oncology, and other, challenges that are facing us, this kind of insurance is clearly, not enough. So how much insurance is enough is the question, and who funds that premium? Because the moment access comes into question, affordability of insurance premium is also a question to handle. And that's the, paradigm and, kind of conundrum that we need to solve for. And there are new age models elsewhere in the world that we can learn from.
Is Ayushman Bharat doing enough, according to you, to at least move a step in that direction of increasing insurance penetration or getting more people under that cover?
Well, insurance awareness and coverage has gone up, but we talk about Ayushman Bharat, the amount of coverage is very small. The access remains a challenge, quality remains a challenge, but of course it's a step towards, kind of inclusivity and insurance for all by 2047, but it's a long way ahead.
It's a long way ahead and also a long way to the drug, but not, in terms of the opportunity that exists. So let's put some realism in the picture. What is the ceiling that, stops a drug from going to $1 billion or beyond a certain size? What are the challenges, according to you, that, stop the industry from seeing $1 billion drug?
So look, let me just unpack for you guys. I think Amit mentioned it. Unpack for you guys the categories. There are at least 5 categories of therapies in India that are over $2 billion. Yeah? So oncology, for example, is not $2 billion, but you've got, gastroenterology, you've got cardiology, you've got anti-infectives, etc., which are over between $2 and $4.5 billion. Then you've got the patient population pool. You've got 100 million people with diabetes, 220 million people with hypertension. You've got 1.4 million people every year that are diagnosed with cancer. And what's interesting is if you compare that with China, the number of people diagnosed with a similar size population in China is 3 times. Obvious question, why is that happening? And we can talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that's my first point. My second point, when you think of the kind of challenges that exist, the biggest misnomer about the Indian market is that we have a patent problem. There is no patent problem in the Indian market. There's very few instances of local companies breaking patent. If there's a legal way to crack patent, they will. If you haven't registered here or your patent is going to go out in 2 years, of course they'll crack it, and that's the right thing to do. That's the right access model for India as well. My third point is, when you look at our market is not an innocent affordability issue. There is a Scandinavia, there's a Southeast Asia, and there's Sub-Saharan Africa. At least for the top 2, it's a cash flow issue. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Where the access model is not just about putting cash up forward. The access model is around how do you build adequate cash flow or financing options, and how do you get the access model rolled out across the country with a distributor and an access partner. Right? And let me give you a realistic number, a realistic example. 4 years ago, we have a product, I'm telling you all public numbers, so I'm not telling you any secrets here. Right? We have a product called Keytruda, immuno-oncology product. Product was launched about 2017. It had about 3 indications till about 2020, right? So melanoma and I think 2 lung cancer indications. At which point the product was about, $15 million. Yeah, it's about till 2021. And when you look at it, number $15 million product, nobody gives you even a side eye in any headquarters, right? They won't even look at you. What we did as a team is we said, okay, what are the 3-4 things that we need to do to crack this and make this with an ambition of $500 million? Now, when you're at 15 million And many of my colleagues can tell you, you tell people 500 million, they just roll their eyes and move on, right? But our team said, okay, there are a couple of things we need to do. First thing, you need to make sure you register as many indications as possible that are aligned to what Global has. So we registered very quickly 16, 17 indications. This year we should have about 20, which means across the big 6, 7 tumors, you're registered. Lung, India is the biggest market probably for head and neck, breast cancer, cervical cancer, etc. So we've got big 6, 7 tumors covered. Third thing, so once you've registered these, and we had a fantastic support from DCGI, from our health authority. The next question is, well, how do you make it affordable? This is at retail prices, MRP, $100,000 product. What we did is we built an access model where majority of our patients can get access based on their income for this product for less than 15%. So we've gone from serving 1,500 patients 5 years ago to serving nearly 20,000 patients. And our top line, and I'm not, again, discussing any private numbers because this is available publicly in the market, we'll hit over $220 million, not far away from $250 million, right? Now, in order for this product to hit whatever number we can think of, think of billion, $500 million, to me, that's less important rather than to say, in a market where you have 1.7 million 1.4 million new cancer patients, can you serve, like Amit said, 100,000 patients? That's not that crazy. At current price point, maybe not, but certainly if you drop the price point, make the access model more affordable, you can serve 100,000 patients. Can you serve 500,000 patients out of 220 million in hypertension with a new disease-modifying product? I think you can. You may not be able to do it alone as an MNC. You may need, multiple, perhaps Indian partners to help you. They have much broader coverage. But I think that's very doable. So I think one dialogue that I think we kind of need to move away from also is this US model of blockbuster $1 billion. Right? I think for the Indian market, one measure we must look at is how many patients are we serving? And, price point can vary. Not every patient population has to be served with exactly the same price.
That's an interesting point, because 2 or 3 things stand out so far. The most important one is obviously you look at the metric as the number of people you're serving as against just the revenue size of that drug. The second part is improving access where, you look beyond just insurance to allow people to be able to get access to that drug, financing, maybe beyond insurance, some NBFC model or something. I'm sure one of these guys here is thinking on those lines, and obviously increase both the insurance penetration and the amount so far. But, for a market, Amit, I remember you coming with an important data point saying that a large part of the market in the country, or large part of the population, hasn't even used allopathic medicines. Forget, having access to a drug or something. So how do you account for that? How do you increase that? And secondly, for a market which is historically more generic focused, how do you have a drug which is successful at the same time? What are the challenges here? And is there any risk of policy backlash as soon as a drug hits a particular ceiling?
Let me unpack that because there are many points which we should talk about on what was there and what has changed. See, earlier, when there was a launch that happened globally, it was almost 3 to 4 years before that product would come to India. Got it. Right? Which was, I'm talking about a decade or so ago. That has moved to less than 12 months. So you're getting faster access to a global product, which is an innovative therapy, much quicker in the country. So that's one. The second is, what was the relative pricing of that product that was available in global markets vis-a-vis that in India? So there was always a certain range in which some of these products would have been launched. But now, for example, what we've launched in India is less than 10%. So the CAR-Ts that are offered in US are $500,000. We've launched it at 5 to 8% of that cost in India, right? So we are breaking the price barrier now in India. And that's what many patients look for. Right. Are you getting something which is of a global standard with global quality outcomes at a price that they feel is of value, right? So there's a value question here. So that's number 2. The access issue still remains. So apart from the number of people who don't really look at allopathy, and that number is reducing, both with Ayushman Bharat as well as access to healthcare, Because a major part of the growth of health infrastructure is now happening in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Right? And that got accelerated during the COVID time. Many of the drainage that used to take place from smaller cities to bigger cities actually got reversed. And many of the doctors started building out infrastructure there. So that trend has actually gone back. What is important is how are you working with this system to actually give that transparency to the patient? That becomes more and more important, right? Because as you get more transparency, then the patient himself or herself takes that decision whether the price is something they are willing to pay or not.
Got that.
There are many takers for that price. It's a question of whether they see that delivering or not.
Right. Rehan, you've spoken about Keytruda, and I'm sure there are a lot more other opportunities as well, which might not hit $1 billion, but definitely showing a lot of promise. We have the publicly available data for, Mounjaro and all the GLP-1s that have come in as well. So what, according to you, is the next opportunity? Let's not call it $1 billion drug, but what are the categories where there is promise? That's point number one. And secondly, you did allude to China. What have the learnings been from other emerging market countries, China and Brazil, etc., that may help in cracking the market in India?
So look, I think the first question, what categories? There are 8-10 categories above $1 billion. Oncology will hit $1 billion very soon. Question is, and Amit said this, would the patient, is their disease modifying? Is it available at the right price? It is accessible, and do you know about it? If you have 2,500 oncologists in the country serving, roughly 25 million patients, a little bit more than that actually, living with cancer, and 1.4 million new patients. If you look at China, China has, 20 times the number of oncologists and 4.5 million patients being diagnosed. When you look at any disease state in our country, take any disease state, the patient almost always shows up at quite a late stage. Cancer is normally stage 3, stage 4. Sometimes it is 6-7 months away from the patient passing away. So the question is, if you diagnose early, and there's a whole infrastructure around that, obviously that's increasing in tier 2, tier 3 cities. I don't even want to segment by therapy area. Take any therapy area, good disease modifying drug, as soon as it's approved in EU or US FDA, normally our health authority will accept that data. You don't have to do a phase 3 trial always. You will normally accept that and get clearance quite quickly. And in many instances, and I can't talk about this publicly because some of these are private conversations, but many instances, health authority will reach out to us aggressively in advance saying, look, X and Y you've registered, why haven't you launched it? We're launching something in January. The health authority has already reached out to us 3 or 4 times. So
what is it that you're launching?
We'll talk, it'll be launching in January, but my point is it's a rare drug that we're launching, and there's enough of a patient population pool available where the health authority is concerned. So I think, to me, the opportunity is very clear. The question now for all of us sitting in the room is, what type of models can we build? And I know there are enough founders here, and there's enough problems to be sorted by therapy area, which we can solve for. Because I can tell you, and we have a number of multinationals, heads here, sitting here as well, most of us can't solve it on the pharma side. Most of us are incapable of solving it alone. For example, on our biggest product, Keytruda, we have 4 or 5 partners. We have really one major distributor that helps us nationally. We have a third-party NBFC partner. We have a partner company that looks at solving it from an access point of view. And all of these work as seamlessly with us as a company owned by us, in a very captive manner. So the issue is not very simple. Well, look, India is largely an 80% out-of-pocket market. As a price, please go pay that on your credit card and afford it. The question is, for the right patient with the right affordability, what will you pay for? And the question always comes from everybody's headquarters, largely is a lack of understanding of India. This is a significant problem. I've worked at Abbott, I've run Abbott here, I've run Abbott Nutrition here, I've run business in China and Southeast Asia. The understanding of our market is, and that's up to us to make people understand our market better. The understanding when you compare it, the phenomenal understanding. China is a $120, $130 billion pharma market, is a really well-developed ecosystem around biotechs. And there are dozens of deals being done on Chinese biotechs with the US, pretty much at every stage. In India, we've had one significant deal. All of you, I'm sure, aware of it. $2 billion deal with Glenmark between AbbVie. So there's a long way to go, and for your next question, I have an answer around, I think, what are some ideas around building out that ecosystem?
Right. And, we spoke about China and Brazil. Are there any innovative financing ideas, or are there any innovative insurance products that you've seen in countries outside of India where you believe that the market is ripe for disruption here in India and you're looking to launch that?
Look, talking about the newer drugs, Keytruda, for example, now insurance covers it, So, however, the new age drugs, the cost is prohibitively, it really puts the whole financing premium model and then the penetration at, a big question mark. Now, talking about that, the newer models that have been, kind of experimented and worked well, and some part of it we do see, in India, like patient support group, some bit of access through the pharma companies that come to fore. There are certain models around, bill now, pay later. Co-payment options of subscription. These are the models that could really take the burden off. Take this challenge of whether or not I can access the care which is best in class because of the affordability issue. Those are models that could really be experimented, but it's not one stakeholder. The bridge has to be built across the consumer, the caregiving, the provider, the pharma company, and the financing units. At once for us to really solve this issue.
Could you throw some light on some of the live models that you're currently working on and how the response has been?
See, from an insurance standpoint, we currently have only one conventional model, which is basically you pay the premium, you actually have actuarial, statistics of what is the prevalence of incidence rate and what is the kind of probability of cost of treatment. With that, the premiums are ascertained. I could really talk about how the whole insurance coverage has changed over a decade. We would see people buying up to a 5 lakh insurance. As we speak, a staggering amount of more than 40% of consumers in our cohort at ICICI Lombard have bought more than 10 lakh of insurance. More than 25% buying insurance upwards of 25 to 50 lakhs. So that's one change that has happened that we pushed through innovative, affordable product design, the new age, kind of coverages, talking about daycare, all kinds of OPD and wellness, preventive kind of care that we can talk about. But the newer age solutions where subscription based, there's some bit of innovation in terms of EMIs, which is not really innovation because you actually are committing to a premium and you're just going to pay it over a period of time, maybe 12 months or 5 years insurance being bought out and paying in 4 installments. But the real innovation will come with the models around subscription, patient support group, trying and looking at more number of people accessing care and with that affordability coming into fore.
Right. So let's now mix it up because we've heard all your points, and the important part is that it's a multi-pronged approach and not one particular stakeholder that can take India's market to have at least $1 billion drug, or as Rehan pointed out, a drug that has access to a lot of people. So we have some stakeholders on this panel so far. Amit, if you had to make a suggestion to Rehan and Priya, what would it be for, what would the suggestion be for you to enable a step towards that $1 billion drug?
I can't make any suggestions to these two wonderful leaders. I think they're doing all the right things. The only thing I would say, especially as we have moved into an era where we talk about patient centricity, right? There's a lot of talk about how we need to have more patient centricity. The reality is coming as you get more high value therapies or as the diseases are becoming more serious. Patients are doing a lot of homework themselves, right? And the treatment, so they are understanding what the treatment modalities are, they are understanding the costs, they are going from hospital to hospital, and then they are taking a view. So you're getting a lot more informed patients that are coming to their clinicians and having a more educated discussion. At the same time, the therapies itself are becoming more personalized, which means that what Rehan was mentioning, the ecosystem, whether they like it or not, they have to work together. The hospital, the distributor, the cold chain, the lab, the insurer, everybody has to work together because ultimately the access has shifted from the clinician only to the patient and the ecosystem in which that patient is being treated. The one thing I have always felt needs to be done at much more pace is for insurance companies and for pharmaceutical companies to generate real world data and actually use that as a basis for pricing, reimbursement, as well as awareness creation. I think India still lacks that data engine and real world data to be out there, but we are seeing it happen, especially with areas like oncology, etc.
Wonderful. Any suggestion that you would have for both the stakeholders here?
Like,
Or any ask, let's put it that way.
the obvious ask, which is actually the broader room, is what would it take? I'm preempting a question for you, Nitin. What would it take for us to build an ecosystem here? This is not just a pharma industry, diagnostic company, hospital issue. And there is a broader question around what would it take, and we could talk a little bit more about what a great example looks like of what an ecosystem is. Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Sure. Let me spend about a minute or two on it. Let me take you 8,000 miles away. Syria, Cambridge, 150,000 people, 1,000 startups, 25,000 PhDs, and a full ecosystem of hospitals, whether that's the Harvard network, BU, MIT engineering. That whole ecosystem with at least a couple of hundred VCs who are willing to take a bet, or financiers willing to take a bet on ideas in the lab all the way to the bedside. And then you've got NIH, billions of dollars of funding, etc. Now, let me compare that with any kind of research triangle in our country. I won't compare it to China, because China, there are lots of examples. And today, we don't have the collaboration. We don't have the collaboration between academia, where basic research could be done, with venture capitalists. We don't have any place where you'd have even 2,500 PhDs who'll be willing to take a punt and work with VCs to basically build a new business. And we certainly don't have the large big pharma looking to buy many of these assets at the early stage, which exists. Pretty much every big pharma company has an R&D center in Cambridge. 20 years ago, I used to live on a street in Cambridge, Sydney Street, residential street. Today, if you go there, there are 250 biotechs just on that street. Just Kendall Square, which is where MIT is, there's 120 biotechs just in Kendall Square. So if you look at that, the kind of drugs that are coming out are probably serving about 250 million people in the Americas. Out of that, you take all the NCs that come out of that ecosystem. And I think that to us today is a big challenge. We have no example today, not even 5 examples of NCEs that have come out through that type of an ecosystem in our country. And there's a real big opportunity, at least for us to build, even in one small therapy area, an example of that. And then, obviously that can get licensed for other markets. It doesn't just have to be the domestic market in India. So just one example of a city where it's not one player, right? There are 6, 7 types of players who have partnered together to really build this over 30, 40 years. And this takes a long time to build. In China, I think there are plenty of examples where this is happening. The second piece, and I'm sure many people in this room are in that box, there are thousands of Chinese who've come back to China, and the government has enabled them to come back and really live and build in China and build a career in China. And I can tell you a dozen examples of what they've created. And I'm not talking about tech, I'm talking really about basic science and biomedicine, where that has been licensed to both Chinese and multinational companies. And I don't think that's today true. I mean, if you are a really smart Indian who's done a PhD, wants to work in the US, wants to do research, probably not that many people are looking at our country today to come back and do basic research and build a career here. So I think all those things today do need to exist in order for us to have multiple billion-dollar drugs coming out of our country.
Oh, both of them very poignant points, but let's see whether the ecosystem actually turns towards there or not. But Priya, instead of asking these two guys, if there's an ask that you'd have from the government, what would that be? Because in the budget that went by, we had 36 life-saving drugs on which the basic customs duty was reduced. Do you think that's enough? Is there anything else that the government should do. Obviously, the recent GST cuts that have come by should help as well from a customer standpoint. But what else is your ask?
Look, there are a lot of reforms that are happening, and what has happened on GST, especially on life and health insurance. A completely zero net off GST is going to benefit the consumer, and in net effect, to certain extent, drive the penetration. The life-saving drugs, where even in the medical equipment, some class, the GST has been removed. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done from a policymaker standpoint to make affordability, make the elements of the new age drugs and the technology to be accessible to the larger masses. But I would say more than the government and the policymakers, if I were to reflect from what these two gentlemen spoke about, as insurance industry, we have plethora of data. We have consumers who declare at the time of buying the insurance, and over a period of time, the health risk really progresses. And we have seen in our own data across the industry a staggering increase of around 30% in oncology cases itself. Talking about diabetes and hypertension and other lifestyle conditions as well. So there's a lot of data only from an insurance segment, including Ayushman Bharat, that we can really mine. We can not only talking about reactive in a caregiving standpoint, from a pharmaceutical standpoint, but also predictively do a lot of work on progression, create risk scores, create elements of areas where we could partner with pharma companies as well as the new age, does a lot of work from advanced, therapy standpoint. How can we really partner as an ecosystem to really make, some of the newer technologies brought in preventatively rather than only curatively, is what is one area that I'm reflecting that we could really, as a low-hanging, opportunity. And of course, there's a lot that government can do from a, kind of inclusive ecosystem perspective, and there's no end to it.
Can I add
Yeah,
a point?
please.
Here? See, if you look at the whole presence or relevance of rare diseases, right, which are diseases under which there's no innovation that takes place, but at a very limited level, there are some innovators who create medicines at very high value, right, because the population pool is less. There are 7 million such patients in India. Let me take an example of SMA, which is spinal muscular atrophy, right, for which one of the global companies have launched a drug at $2 million. Now, India will always be a country where you have to, whatever you do, you have to think through how you're bringing affordability and accessibility, right? And you are still trying to bring innovation into the country while you are having those two guardrails, right? Because there are very few people who can even afford, forget about 2 million,
Yeah.
$500,000. And hence, the point that Rehan mentioned, see what is happening today is, if you look at China, especially the area we are in, which is cell and gene therapy, there are thousands of trials that are happening in China compared to a fraction that is happening in this side of the world, right? And if you don't drive that innovation from the country itself, you will never be able to solve for all the entire package.
What is it, according to you, that it will take for the first step towards that?
I think the regulation has to enable the ecosystem to come together, the pathways to getting some of these clinical trials done at a pace that does not starve a young organization has to be put in place. The institutional framework to enable some of those trials needs to be stepped up, the infrastructure that is there. So everything has to come together. And then you have to have the ecosystem. Because see, what happens is when you're doing some of this early stage innovation, you use a lot of expensive equipment. Now, as a young company, you don't have the means to actually get that. You need grants from the government, you need that upfront funding, and you need a pathway to be able to get to a certain stage where you have other interested companies, either large biopharma or other investors, to even come in and look at it. And that also is limited in India. So at that level, we need to start. And then we need to have access to a large pot of risk capital. There are very few funds like Eight Roads who are willing to back early stage companies in the innovative space, right? You need at least 20 more of them to be able to provide this impetus.
I was waiting for an Eight Roads reference. I'm glad that came. There were very few funds, but one of the asks would obviously be for all the investors, including the likes of Eight Roads, etc., to have a longer-term horizon and higher appetite for risk for them to be able to, succeed in business as pharmaceutical. But if you had to, place a bet, irrespective of what the pecking order of drugs right now is in India, the next blockbuster drug, whichever way we define it, does it come from a local pharma company or does it come from an MNC? Where would you hazard that bet?
Look, my 2 cents is I don't think it matters.
Yeah, obviously.
There's very little difference between a really progressive local MNC and a multinational MNC. In fact, there's almost no difference. And I would venture to say something sacrilegious, which is, I think, from a respect point of view, I'll tell you, execution quality, well, local MNCs sometimes are much further ahead than multinational MNCs. Having said that, question is around quality of execution, quality of talent that you can attract that's going to spend some time, whether it's early stage stuff or whether it's on the commercial side or on the regulatory side or whichever side. And then the third piece, I think, most importantly, is how will you build an access model, whether that's through insurance, whether that's with a non-banking financial partner or the bank. But whatever product you have, there's only very few people buying Bentleys in India, right? And there's a reason for that. If the product's 100, 150, 200,000, $1 million, there's very few buyers for it. And those Scandinavian buyers, I'll call them Scandinavian buyers, can go to, Fox Chase, they can go to MGH, they can go to all kinds of places and get treated directly. They don't need to be treated in India. So we have to make sure, whether it's a rare disease product, it has to be accessible. I'll give you an example. We have a small category of rare disease called pulmonary arterial hypertension. There's about 60,000 patients in India with this particular disease state, which is very hard to diagnose. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5 years for doctors to diagnose. From a cardiologist point of view, there's probably 500, 600 cardiologists in the country that can focus on this, and maybe about 100 pulmonologists, right? When you've got 60,000 patients potentially diagnosed with that few doctors, and you don't have a therapy, disease-modifying drug here today, if a drug shows up, say, at a 7-8 lakh rupee number, and that was available through, an EMI model where the percentage was paid by the manufacturer at 50 to 60,000 rupees a month, I would say half of that population could probably afford that product. But if that product is available, for $40,000 or $50,000 at one shot, probably 5-10% of that population can afford it. Therefore, that access model has to be built with all of you founders here, and certainly with pharma, because from a manufacturer point of view, we are very open to looking at all different types of model. There's no one model that will solve this. And I think to Amit's point, if it's a $2 million product, for notional reasons, people can launch it in this country. It doesn't really mean anything. It won't. And, if you look at our government, and I think to be fair to our government, from a government and regulatory point of view, they're not trying to solve for 5,000, 10,000 people. Yeah. They're trying to solve for hundreds of thousands of people. And if you go with that model to a health authority and talk to them, they're very open to discussing it and very open to, even from a regulatory point of view, supporting you in registering that drug product and looking at data very objectively.
All right, so we'll just just 2 numbers that I'd want from you guys. By when? And, what would the number be? You look at $1 billion or you look at a number of patients. By when do we get there? Let's start with Amit.
I think it'll happen very soon. And it depends on the therapy area, right? Because if you look at oncology, to the point Rehan mentioned, if we get the access model in place, patients are waiting.
Mario?
I'll just give you exactly Amit's point. I'll give you a product and I'll give you a number, okay?
Perfect.
Today we have Keytruda serving 20,000 patients and, somewhere around $250 million sales, right? If you drop the price and serve 100,000 patients at $10,000, you'd hit it very, very quickly. And if
that's in the works, I suppose.
What was that, sorry?
That's in the works, I suppose.
No, absolutely. You have to, once you've proven a model with 20,000 patients, it's much easier to go to your headquarters and say, hey, look, I can serve many more patients, number one. Number two, if you look at an insurance model, a partnership with insurance, or let's just say you want to go to PMJY, you want to go to Ayushman Bharat, that covers 500 million people. If you can have a product at $5,000, that isn't crazy at all. That's a very affordable number for any pharma manufacturer. even if you got quarter of a million patients, very quickly you'll exceed $1 billion. So I think the progressive part of that lies not necessarily with our government. Our government is telling us, listen, I cover 500 million people and I give you $5,000-6,000. Now go and figure out a model that serves those people.
All right? Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with what Rehan and Amit mentioned. I mean, just look at Ayushman Bharat. That itself could be a very big opportunity. And same is true for insurance covered consumers existingly who have insurance and more getting on board, I guess, very soon.
Very soon. All right, that leaves us with 5 minutes of questions and answers. Prem was talking about, everyone in the audience having a lot of loaded questions, so fire it away. None of them for me, I hope. There's one.
So thank you very much, Rehan and Amit and Mangalam, to join this conversation, a great conversation, and Prem to organize this. I will just quote 2004, and we have got a lot of colleagues from Dr. Reddy's here, and the book was written, Unfinished Agenda, by Dr. N.G. Reddy, and he discovered anti-diabetic product which was given to Novo Nordisk. We were much ahead of China at that time, but last 20 years we have lost that decade. But a lot of things happening, as both Rehan mentioned. First is AbbVie. They got $600 million today, and they will get $2 billion. So they will get a lot of things. Saroglitazar, Zydus is launching their fatty liver products in the US. We have got Sun, they've bought 2 products in the US for alopecia, and already this is touching $500 million. So lot is happening, lot needs to be done. Good beginning, but we have to go a long way. Starting, we lost 2 decades, but this is going to be a decade of India, point number 1. More important is what Rehan was saying. How do we build that ecosystem of access in this country? And access is the major issue because in India, as you said, number of patients which are being diagnosed is very less. But how do we build that model? And for that, building that model, first is the mindset. Instead of blaming the government and the parent company, we have to find our own way. Thanks for those insights. You have made the difference, Rehan, and Amit is trying to do it, and there are many people who are trying to do it. We'll see a lot happening. I represent Indian Pharma Alliance, work with the government, work with the companies very closely, and thanks, Prem, for this discussion.
Wonderful. Any other questions in the audience? There's one. Right, so there are only 2 reasons why there are no questions. One, when people listen to everything and they have nothing else to ask, or the second, none of them are listening.
So,
Okay, there's one right at the back.
yeah. So, hi, I'm a clinical scientist at the Tata Memorial Hospital. I'll give you the other side of the perspective that we just
please.
heard from the dais. You see, the argument that we do not have talent, we do not have resources is not grounded in reality. You have 2 of the biggest research centers in India right here in Mumbai. One is in Navi Mumbai, one is in Powai. You have adequate PhDs over there, you have adequate scientists over there. These are the guys who go to the West and conduct a majority of the R&D. The question isn't, how you bring them back. The question is, how do you stop them from going there? And this is where I think we are very averse to risk capital. We need a lot of investments happening. I can give you a personal example. In the past decade, I think about 2 or 3 guys came and collaborated with us. One of them happened to be a professor at IIT Bombay. I don't know if anybody is around here from that company. They worked with us to develop a low-cost CAR-T therapy. The rest, as you know, is history. So there is a model. The government is supportive. We need this aversion to risk capital to go away, and we need people to come and work with and collaborate with academic centers. We do not have a center like they have in Basel with Novartis. We do not have a center like AstraZeneca has in the UK. We need the private sector to step up. I mean, you're going to fail 9 out of 10 times, but it's the one time that you succeed is where your first $1 billion drug is going to come from.
Right, wonderful. I think that's a poignant point to end this conversation on. And, Prem, they're just saying that keep deploying more capital. That's all. All right, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.